What's going on, everybody? It's that time again. It's the Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 67 on this Monday, March 18th, 2024. Josh Callaway, James E. Jackson, Tom Green with you guys on a Monday. Oh my, Selection Sunday came and went, and it did not go well for Porter Moser's group. We're going to talk all about it. We'll preview the women's tournament a little bit, as well as they got their path moving forward into March. We'll also wrap up a little bit more football. We're going to do a little special teams status report to kind of wrap up our status report series and dive fully into spring camp, kind of moving forward really with basketball ending with a thud. But gentlemen, I think we have to start there. It's not often, if ever, so far that we've been doing the show that we don't lead with football. But I think the situation calls for it today. Obviously, Selection Sunday was yesterday. The bracket came out, and Oklahoma's not in the NCAA tournament. Now, obviously, we've talked about their standing for the tournament for weeks, right? And that's what you do at this time of year. And we all kind of felt like that 20th win locked it up. And Oklahoma certainly felt that way. You could tell by the body language of the players. And I asked Porter Moser directly after that Cincinnati win, do you feel like you locked up your bid? And he, with zero hesitation, said, absolutely, no doubt. And we all thought that was right. But a crazy amount of bid steals happened, and lo and behold, Oklahoma's the first team out. There's a lot to digest, a lot to talk about with everything with this basketball program right now. But let's just start with the micro, I guess I should say. The fact that they got left out. Tom, we'll start with you. Obviously, we covered the team all year. Do you think Oklahoma got hosed here, I guess, is there's the best way to put it. The decision to actually leave Oklahoma out of the field, how surprised were you that the Sooners got left out? And just what do you make of what the selection committee decided to do with them?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised when, they didn't make the field. Pretty much everybody that had them making the field, even if they were the last team in, like ESPN had them heading into Selection Sunday. I don't think they got hosed per se, but things just did not break their way this week.
Everything they could have went against them. Yeah.
There were 5 bid thieves, which the last 2 years combined, there were 3. So you had teams like NC State making a surprising run through the ACC. They wouldn't have made the tournament otherwise. Oregon wouldn't have made the tournament had they not won the Pac-12. UAB would have not made the tournament had they not won their conference title. So things just did not break their way. And look, Oklahoma kind of talked about it after losing on Wednesday to TCU. It's like, hey, you control what you can control. And Oklahoma could not control anything these last 4 days leading up to the tournament. And it's unfortunate for them. They feel like they did enough to make the tournament. Certainly we thought that they did enough to make the tournament, and we were wrong there. Mm-hmm. Being the first team out makes it even more of a gut punch for them.
Brutal.
You look at a couple of teams that got in over them, like Virginia is the big head scratcher.
Yeah,
I think to all of us here. Virginia didn't really do too much to warrant a thing, but man, it's tough for Oklahoma. You get your first 20-win regular season since 2016. You're 46 in the net. You don't have any losses outside of quad 1, but you only went 4-12 in quad 1 games and only 2 wins against the NCAA tournament field, which that's a tough pill to swallow. Your non-conference strength of schedule is what really hurts them. They finished 274th there. Some of that is, hey, schedule better teams. Don't schedule the worst team in Division I in Mississippi Valley State. But also, everybody expected Iowa and USC to be better than they were. Like, those looked like really
Arkansas too.
Wins. Yeah, Arkansas too. Those looked like really good wins heading into the season. And then all of a sudden, it's all those teams kind of crater. It's tough, and the injury situation certainly didn't help either. Those that last month really, losing John Hughley for 8 games, losing Rivaldo Soares for 2 games and change. Same with Javion McCollum. It's just a tough pill to swallow, and things just did not break their way in any way possible.
Hey, on the Virginia thing, and then James, I want to get you in there. The Virginia thing is that's the one that's going to drive you the most crazy. Like you said, Virginia 4-5 their last 9 games. They haven't beat a tournament team since February 3rd. They have 2 quad 1 wins, or 2-7 against quad 1 teams, and they have 3 quad 2 losses. Like Tom just said, Oklahoma has none, obviously.
Only 4 other teams with zero losses outside quad 1.
Like
3 of them are 1 seeds, and the other one won the SEC.
So the Virginia, that's the one that's going to drive you the most crazy if you're Oklahoma. The argument for Virginia over Oklahoma, I don't know. It's not strong. And they played in a conference that was far weaker. Obviously, the ACC was basically Carolina and Duke and a bunch of not very good teams this year. And the Big 12 is the Big 12. So that's the one that's going to drive you the most crazy if you're Oklahoma. And I think that's a totally fair beef for Virginia. Virginia also lost some games by like 30+ this year. They couldn't break 40 a couple of times. Like they played poor basketball a lot of the year. They only have a decent win total because their conference was pretty weak. Their resume is not that good. It's not as good as Oklahoma's, in my opinion. That's the one that's going to hurt you the most. James, for you, from what was your kind of, I guess, thoughts going through this whole weekend from afar? Obviously, you've been covering the team every day, but you're keeping up with what the team's doing. Mm-hmm. What was kind of how did you approach the weekend? Were you thinking, OU is in some trouble here? Where were you kind of at as Sunday kind of kept approaching, I guess?
I figured they were on the bubble, but I saw a lot of what, Tom had wrote. He looked at a lot of good sources and things like that. And you keep up with them. You're like, okay, so it looks like OU's going to have both teams in, OU, the men's and the women's teams. That's what it's going to be. But, when it didn't happen, I saw the outlash, the backlash that it got from, all of the OU insiders, all of the OU fans, all of the OU community just really reacting to what happened. And it looked like it was devastating. Obviously, the resumes don't seem to, like you talked about with Virginia, the resumes don't seem to add up at this point in time. I mean, I don't understand how the selection process goes for that, because resume is what it's supposed to be when you don't actually get to play each other. All the teams don't get to play each other. What resume did you put together? What teams did you beat? What teams did you lose to? All that's supposed to matter here. Now, it seems like to me, when you look at it, you had their injuries at the end of the year. Was that brought into the discussion? Was that a reason for, well, maybe this team isn't all the way healthy? And a lot of those guys, haven't even been to the tournament before. So they just didn't want the inexperience in the tournament. None of them. Yeah, right. None of them. So maybe they just want the inexperience in the tournament. Maybe that's what it came down to, is like, I don't know how healthy this team is. Let's go with somebody else that could basically be a better product for the tournament. That's pretty much what it would be at this time. But you got to think about it, man. The brand of Oklahoma would have been good enough, I think. Just to me, it'd be good enough to be in the tournament. I mean, it's weird, man. It's weird. And I know we're going to get into NIT and maybe why they declined it. Maybe because they're not so healthy, at the time. We'll get into that a little bit here in a second. But I mean, that's what I got from the weekend. That's what I got from it.
Let's look at kind of moving forward. Obviously, the first team out this year. They were second team out 2 years ago. Last year, they were nowhere close. So they're 0-3 on making the tournament under Moser. OU coach hasn't done that. What was it, Tom? In like 50 years or something.
Since like 75.
Not good. Not great. Oklahoma fans are rightfully very upset. I'm not going to really push back on OU fans for being upset. I mean, you missed the tournament 3 years in a row. That shouldn't happen at OU. And OU is not a blue blood basketball program, but it's not a program that should
it's a quality basketball
capable of making the tournament either. Yeah. Like they should be able to get in there. And like I said, Moser's had a raw deal twice now. He thought that they did enough to make it. But I also, again, I'm talking on both sides, but I get the pushback of saying, well, get off the bubble. Get in the tournament more comfortably so you don't have to worry about it. If Oklahoma wins one more game this year, they're probably in. If they win that Texas Tech game, they're probably in.
Win that Houston game, they're in.
The Houston game for sure. Now, the Houston game, it's like they played out of their minds.
Yeah.
But the Tech game was there to be had, and that was at home. Tech was good, but not – Houston's obviously arguably the best team in the country. Tech, that game was there. So I guess moving forward, fans are very upset, and again, rightfully so. I'm not going to really push back on that too much. Where are you guys at on the direction of this thing moving forward now? Again, 3-year drought from making the tournament. You're going into the SEC next year. We'll have to wait and see what the roster turnover is like. Moser's had to basically start from scratch every year. Hopefully they can avoid that this time, but who knows? Remains to be seen. We'll see. Where are you kind of at, I guess, in the confidence that Oklahoma's going to be able to rectify this next year and get back to the tournament finally? Or, is there smash the panic button like this is not working right now? I guess just a temperature check on the program right now as we move into, year 4 of Moser and the first in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you panic or hit eject because he has a $10 million buyout as of May 1st.
Sure.
So unless some other job opening pops up where he feels the opportunity that he needs to bolt, Porter Moser is going to be the coach of this team next year. Like, I know some fans don't want to hear that, but making a coaching change as you are moving into a different conference is not ideal either. You need to maintain some continuity, and a lot of that is going to be on Porter Moser and his staff in getting some of these guys to stay. Obviously, you're losing Rivaldo Soares, you're losing Latrey Darthur, you're losing Max Konchak. Sam Godwin may or may not be back. He has another year of eligibility if he wants to use that COVID year. I know he'd be welcome back. But this team is going to look a little bit different. I wouldn't be surprised to see some roster attrition through the portal, but I wouldn't expect it to be 6 players like it was last year, or 8 players like it was when Porter Moser first took over. I expect a lot of these guys to be back. You need to do what you can to keep guys like Jalen Moore, who was a great roster addition last year. JV McCollum was your leading scorer. I think there's areas of his game he stands to improve on, but he was one of your better players this year, and you need to do what you can to keep him. Milo Suzanne, he showed some promise. He's a great playmaker. All these guys need to improve in some area.
Right.
I'm curious to see who might enter the portal. I don't know if you want to talk about some portal targets for them, but as of right now, they have one available scholarship that they need to fill heading into next season, without anybody else leaving. With the 2 freshmen 2024 signees and Cool Attack and Dayton Forsyth coming in, so you don't have too much wiggle room in terms of what you can add to this roster. That's going to become more clear over the next several weeks. The transfer portal just opened Monday. It's open until May 1st. So there's going to be some movement one way or another with this team. But, I think that this team showed enough this season to at least feel a little bit better going into the SEC, which the top of the SEC is really strong.
Yeah.
It is not as deep as the Big 12 is. Like, the SEC is a very good conference. I mean, you look at the teams that made the tournament there, Auburn, Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee. It is a strong conference, but it is not the absolute murderer's row that Big 12 play is. So I think you have a little bit more leeway in what you can accomplish next year, but you need to upgrade the roster in any way you can, and you need to keep the guys that you feel are going to help take this team to the next level and get over that hump and get off that bubble finally.
Yeah, I mean, fans got to kind of be careful with the coaching change. I mean, I understand there's a standard at Oklahoma. I understand. I mean, you want to be successful at Oklahoma. That's for sure. But this has been a building process so far. I mean, honestly, I think he's gotten better each year with his group. Now, he's had to, bring in different guys every season. And I don't think at any certain time throughout his tenure here that we've thought he underachieved based on the players that he had on the roster. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Now, it looks like he did now because of the start that they had to this season, where they were just, undefeated and, in top, we're in the top 10 at one point,
top
right?
10,
top
7.
Or they number 11. I can't remember. Yeah, 7. Top 10.
Yeah, number 7.
Yeah, so to get in the top 10 and all that. So now it looks like you underachieved because of where you were at the height of this thing. But for me, that shows that you're going in the right direction. Now, at the end of the year, obviously, it was really bad, but you can build on that. You've shown that you can do that. You can go out and recruit with that, and you got those guys like Kual, like Tom talked about, and Dayton Forsyth coming in, who are ballers, man. Those 2 guys are ballers. Now, if you have a coaching change, who knows if those guys come? That all that could be up in the question, because the transfer portal NIL. I mean, we've talked about it in depth a lot of times. It can really hurt a program. So if the coach leaves, everything could fall with it. So you just don't want to be in a situation. I think you give him some more time here. Give him some more time and wait till he really underachieves with the entire roster that you think should be, top 25 team, in the NCAA tournament, things like that, to then say, all right, let's get the guy out here. I mean, because it seems like a guy that really cares about the program. He seems like he's been that way so far. Somebody that really wants to
Yeah.
succeed at Oklahoma. I mean, you had the DePaul rumors and everything like that, and he's denied it emphatically. Just, I'm not doing that. I mean, I'm with Oklahoma. So you get a guy that wants to be here and does and wants to do things well. You keep him around. I think for me, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, the key is obviously, like you guys both said, keeping some continuity, keeping a team, and you're going to have some turnover. That's just college sports in today, especially college basketball. But you have some building blocks here with Jalen Moore, J.V. McCollum, potentially, Caden Cooper, Jacob Cole, who, redshirted this year. Then Luke Northweather played a whole lot better as he pretty much got more minutes. The same guy was maybe back. You supplement that with some portal ads and the guys you're signing. You have a decent little group to kind of build off of moving into next year, which, like Tom said, SC's got some really good teams, but it's not quite as deep. There are some more winnable games, certainly, than the Big 12 is, which is basically 1 through whatever, however many teams in the Big 12 now, 14. Is everybody's pretty tough, especially on the road. So you have some reasons to kind of build on it. This first 21 seasons, 2016, like we said. This was clearly Porter Moser's best team. 9 times out of 10, this team makes the tournament. It was just unbelievably bad luck. And again, I know fans don't really want to hear that, but that's kind of the reality of the situation. So yeah, he's going to be back next year. Now, next year is obviously huge. You have to be the tournament next year. You just have to. You can't go 4 years without. And I think if they do go 4 years without making it, I think fans are going to want change, and I'm not going to really argue with them on that. 4 years without making the tournament, it's a long time for Oklahoma, and nearly half a decade without making the tournament. So next year's huge, obviously, and we'll see. But I think this is another reminder that Oklahoma needs to invest better in the program. The investment is not really there that much, and it's a major chicken and the egg thing because fans will say win more and the investment will come, but you can also argue they need to invest more to win more. It goes back and forth. I don't know what the correct answer is, but when you look at the arena that they play in, the complete non-existent NIL. I mean, they don't have anything in that regard when it comes to basketball. The fan support is wishy-washy. I mean, there's just not a lot of support for that program right now. I'm not making excuses for Porter, but it's just it's a hard job. It is in the Big 12. Maybe it'll be easier next year. We'll see. We'll find out. So I don't know. Tough year. And like I kind of was saying yesterday, the toughest pill to swallow would be the fact that they thought they were in. You could tell the body language after that Cincinnati win, there was a relief and excitement. They thought they were in. And I asked Porter before the Big 12 tournament if he was resting guys because he thought they were in. He said no. So I'm not going to say he's lying or anything, obviously, but you can't help but wonder if they felt less comfortable, if they would have been more inclined to maybe push J.V. McCollum or Rivaldo Suarez in that TCU game. They rested everybody, which I thought was the right move. Hand up, I thought was the right move. They got beat pretty soundly, and now they're out. And now it looks like, dang, could they have played? That's a fair question now.
And you feel for guys like Rivaldo Suarez and Latrey Darthur, guys whose college careers are over now.
Stuff like that.
Especially the way that those two seniors in particular played down the stretch to kind of, obviously will them to that win against Cincinnati that they thought, kind of sealed it. Trey Darthur was your leading scorer in that game. Rivaldo Suarez had one of his better games of the year too. And then just the way that both of them played when this team was shorthanded down the stretch, like they wanted so badly to finish off their careers with their NCAA tournament appearance. And then the chips just did not fall their way over the last week. And that is, like you said, a tough pill to swallow for them. It's something I'm sure that they're going to, be thinking about for a while and, wondering what if Waldo could corral that rebound against Houston and, Jamal Shedd doesn't get that game winner. What if he could have, given it a go on that ankle a little bit better? What if he didn't roll his ankle altogether?
Yeah, or he didn't hurt it at all.
Yeah. What if John Hughley doesn't, injure his meniscus in the first half of that Oklahoma State game? What if Javian doesn't, hurt his shoulder the day before Cincinnati? Like nobody knew about that, and like we spoke to him 2 hours before it happened.
Yeah, right.
It's just a lot of things are going to be running through these guys' minds, and it's something that they're just going to have to accept. And it just wasn't meant to be for them.
It's amazing. We were texting on Saturday, and it was like if they, Temple NC State and Oregon. Like, I think you just get one or two of those teams to lose. They just can't have them all win, and they all won. It was really just amazing. The amount of bid steals was outrageous. It was an all-time year for bid steals. And, of course, Oklahoma is the first team out, which literally means one less bid steal, and they would have been in. Brutal. Last thing, I know we've gone long on this. So last thing to wrap up the conversation with this team for now. And, again, there's going to be portal movement. There's going to be more stuff to talk about as we go along now. But the NIT, obviously it's not a huge thing. Some fans don't care, but they declined the invite. They decided not to play in the NIT last night. So their season is over. 2 years ago, they played in it under Porter Moser. Now, the situations don't feel exactly the same to me. 2 years ago, it was Porter's first year. They ended the season much stronger than this year, and there was kind of this momentum of like, let's show them wrong kind of a thing. Where this year it's more just like deflating, just gutted that they didn't make it. It feels a lot different than it did 2 years ago. How do you guys feel about them declining the invite? It's kind of a contentious topic. Some fans absolutely despise it. Some fans get it. I think it's okay. I mean, I'm on board with declining the invite in this situation. Again, it's a case-by-case basis. It's not a sweeping, nobody should play in the NIT. But I think in this instance, Oklahoma just get into the offseason, start working that portal ASAP, resting your guys that are hurt. I think there's a lot of reasons to go ahead and just let this be what it is. I also wouldn't push back if they decide to play for what it's worth. Where are you guys at on that? Are you okay with Oklahoma declining the NIT, or do you think they should have played it?
Yeah, I have no problem with them declining it for a couple reasons. I think the key thing to really consider, when you read Porter Moser's statement last night when they announced that they were declining it, was, putting the well-being of the student athletes first.
Right.
And look, we were told, after the Big 12 tournament loss that, hey, J.B. McCollum, Rivaldo Suarez, John Hughley, these guys should be good to go for the NCAA tournament. And now you're probably playing Thursday or Friday, or if they were in the play-in game, they'd be playing Tuesday or Wednesday.
Playing tomorrow.
NIT is Tuesday or Wednesday, but I think if they're less than 100%, any of those guys, but it's the NCAA tournament, they push through to try to play.
100%.
You don't put those guys at risk for the NIT, and the NIT used to have a lot more kind of glamour to it, a lot more respectability, and now it's just kind of like a also ran consolation. You look at the teams that opted out of it yesterday, Indiana, Ole Miss, Memphis, St. John's. I mean, nobody's really interested in partaking in that, and I think part of it's the selection process and how they prioritize who gets to be at home and stuff like that. But I get it for these guys, man. If you're not 100% and you're just deflated after being the first team left out, do you really want to play for that consolation prize? Probably not. And also, honestly, the NIT is not financially lucrative for schools most of the time. You're not breaking even a lot of the time when you're a host team.
For sure.
You're not drawing sold out crowds. It's going to be a relatively sparse showing of support for those types of games, and then you gotta just the operating costs and all that, it just isn't worth it sometimes. And given where this team was at health wise, mentally after being the first team left out, I totally get it. And again, it's tough for guys like Rivaldo Suarez and Latrey Darthard, Max Konchak, that hey, their college career is over now, and especially Waldo not getting to play in the Big 12 tournament or the postseason. That's tough for him. But look, this was a team decision. They all talked it over and voted on it after being left out of the field. And I get it. I do.
What about you, James? You okay with the NIT lack of playing?
Yeah. I mean, the competitor in me, you always want to play.
Sure.
But like I said, I don't think that the trio that we're talking about are going to be 100% healthy at the time that they get on the floor. And I think that has played a part. As Tom said, the well-being of the student athletes is what seems to be the biggest issue there. And that's where you want to be at, because you also don't want to go out there and not be at your best and then lose in the first round or something like that, because then it looks really bad. And maybe you give the decision makers, you give them credit for what they did, and you don't want to do that. You know what I mean. You want to make them show them that they made a mistake. So you want to get deep into that tournament, at least get into the championship game and show that you were actually a team that was worthy of being in the tournament. And if you're not healthy, I mean, it's just not going to be a good case. I mean, you're going to do more harm than good in that situation, I think.
Yeah. Like the play the young guys. Well, it's like what young guys? Caden Cooper. Yeah, I mean, you could give him minutes in a game that doesn't mean anything. Jacob Cole's redshirt. He can play. So what young guys? I mean, you're talking about one guy.
And look, if they had made the NCAA tournament, I have zero doubt that Rivaldo Suarez absolutely would have played. Javion McCollum would have played.
Yeah.
John Hughley, like we still don't know like how extensive that injury was. I'm sure they would have tried to push to get him to play. I'm sure he would have tried to push to play, but you don't know how effective or how healthy he would have really been. But having two of those guys available for the postseason, like Waldo's a competitor. Like he wanted to play through that ankle injury all the last 3-4 weeks, whatever it was. And there's a difference between trying to push through that in pursuit of a NCAA tournament win, or trying to get to the Sweet 16, just getting to that second weekend and playing in front of a half empty crowd for the NIT against a bunch of other teams that didn't make the field.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is just like we talked about like 10 minutes ago. The portal is open now. It's open. It's go time. This is a huge offseason for Oklahoma. Getting it started now and not delaying it. I mean, if you go the length of the NIT, it's what, like 2-3 weeks?
Yeah, it's to like April 4th.
Yeah,
you can miss out. That's a big delay on your offseason. If you go the distance now, you go one and done, obviously, but that's not the plan. If you're in it, you're trying to win it. So, yeah, I think just getting to the offseason now, start working that portal ASAP is not a bad thing. And again, I totally get the try to show some pride and try to win, prove the committee wrong. I get that. I'm not going to push back. If they were in the NIT, I wouldn't be sitting here ripping them for playing in it. But I totally understand not. And that's just where I fall on it. So, we'll have a lot more time to continue to talk about the team and the program over the course of the offseason. The portal, it's open. We'll see who jumps in it, who OU gets. There's going to be movement. OSU's already losing half their roster, which you thought they would. Oklahoma's going to be involved there, I would imagine. Especially some local guys. And we'll have a lot more time to talk about that and figure that out as we go over the next however long. As Oklahoma tries to figure this out and piece it together and get back to the tournament next year in the SEC. Let's lower the women a little bit. So the women's bracket came out yesterday as well. They're a 5 seed. They're playing Florida Gulf Coast. They're in the Bloomington, you wouldn't call it region, little quadrant there. Indiana's the 4 seed that they would potentially play. They're matched up to potentially play South Carolina in Sweet 16, which is like the worst possible scenario. That buzzsaw program that they're UConn. They're what UConn used to be. That's what South Carolina is now. James, how do you kind of handicap how this worked out? I mean, I'm still surprised they're a 5. I mean, it just they want to be 12. They feel like they've been underranked the whole time. How do you kind of size up their draw here?
Yeah, like I've said all season long, this team is underrated. They're unranked. I mean, not unranked, but they're under what their ranking should be and things like that. I mean, it's just been that way all season long. So I guess no surprise when you look at that. But if you win the Big 12 regular season championship, you think that would hold a little bit more weight for your ranking and everything like that. But coming in at number 5, maybe slightly was a disappointment. I mean, based on the resumes of the other teams, it didn't. To get the field that you got at number 5, it's brutal, man. It's brutal. As you said, South Carolina is going to be waiting, most likely in the Sweet 16, but OU has to get past, Florida Gulf Coast. And usually that's not something like you think, oh, they're not going to be that good. They won 22 straight, Josh. I mean, like Florida Gulf Coast is incredibly good. They're third in three-pointers in the nation. So this is a very good shooting team, which OU has been all season long. So they can't have those games where they come out really slow and shoot very poorly like they did against Texas a couple of times and then try to come back at the very end. This team, the Florida Ghost team, they can shoot, man. So it's going to be a battle. I think even the first game of this matchup, even though they're the 5 seed and Florida Gulf Coast is the 12 seed, it's going to be a battle. I mean, I'm picking a very close game between these two teams. And I think it should be a fun one, but it's going to be close. It won't be an easy first round matchup as you think you should have gotten, being the higher seed that you are.
It sounds like it'll be up and down. Obviously, if you watch that team at all, you know the pace they like to play at. So you match that with a team that can shoot like FGCU. That's going to be fun. I mean, it's not obviously this team way exceeded expectations, especially after how non-conference went. We talked about it all season.
Yeah, exactly.
You know that Jenny wants to probably. I mean, she's been there 3 years. She's made the tournament all 3 years, which hurts Porter even more. And now they're completely unrelated things separately, but fans have that to turn to. Like, look what Jenny's doing, and the women's program was not in good shape when she took over either. And they've gone 3 straight years, obviously, to the tournament. And they haven't quite been able to break through with like a tournament run. It's hard to easier said than done. 2 years ago, they got blown out when they were a 4 seed at home. Last year, they lost, I think, as a 5 seed last year, I think, if I remember correctly, in the second round also. So now they're in the same boat again. That's kind of where they've lived. We'll see if they can break through. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, just the kind of hanging over. And you can't worry about it. So you need to win the games that are in front of you. But for fans, it's the hanging over you of like, but South Carolina's the Sweet 16. Like that's where we're capped the most because the number of teams that can beat South Carolina is like a couple. I mean, it's a very low group. So we'll see.
Nobody has.
You roll out there and you play, but the South Carolina part of it is maybe just as brutal as, or I think it's probably the most brutal aspect of the whole thing.
Nobody has. I mean, I can't think of what team got close in the SEC tournament.
LSU,
one team got close. Was it? Somebody's gotten close, but it's just very difficult to beat that
when they had the brawl.
Well, it may have, it was a buzzer beater. I think that won it for South Carolina. But I mean, that's who's going to be waiting. And if OU just gets to that, if they just get to that game, they'll be accomplishing something because it hasn't happened in over a decade now. Getting to just the second weekend of this tournament, so that's going to be an accomplishment in its own. Just getting there. So I mean. As you said, what were the expectations for this team before the season? I mean, they lost so much, with the trio that they had, that senior group that was just one of the best of all time in Oklahoma, and you come back and you replace them with 6th man of the year Skylar Vann and bring in Peyton Verhulst from Louisville, you bring in Lexi Keys from OSU, and that team just gels. I mean, so. Either way, I think it'll be just fine. If they get to that second weekend, it'll be a massive accomplishment for this program, and that you can build on from there.
It was Tennessee, by the way, in that
Tennessee. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah.
And they had the brawl with LSU in the final.
Yeah.
100%. If you get there, you're playing with house money. I mean, you're going in saying this is the massive success. Let's just see if we can stun the world, basically.
Yeah, once you're in there, now you have nothing to lose against that team. Yeah. You just play. Yeah. I mean, there's no expectations. So you can knock them out. I mean, that's just what it is.
And we'll see what happens this weekend. They play, I think it's Saturday at 3 when they play Florida Gulf Coast. So look forward to seeing what they do. Get on a little bit of a run over there in Bloomington. And if they set up an Indiana matchup on Monday, that'll be a good one. 5-4 potentially on Monday and Indiana. So keep up with the site. James will be all over that NCAA tournament coverage this week. And we'll see if Jenny can get them on a run here. I mean, incredible season that they won the Big 12 again. They're even here. Obviously, the Big 12 tournament didn't go according to plan. Obviously, Iowa State got them pretty good in that semifinal, but it's been an incredible season, and we'll see if they can keep it rolling into the tournament now. All right, let's wrap up with a little bit of football. We've been doing the stats report series. We did every position, offense and defense. We figured since, spring camp has started last week, but they didn't do anything media. There was no open windows or anything. So we're kind of limited on what we've been able to see, obviously, and just from social media pictures and things like that. So we'll figure let's go ahead and do a little bonus edition of it with the special teams. A lot of fans are very intrigued in special teams. We've even gotten some people have jumped on us for not talking about special teams enough when we did position previews and things like that. So let's go ahead and do that now. The kicker job is open. Zach Schmidt is back. But it's open. They brought in Tyler Keltner from Florida State. We've heard great things about so far. Tom, you had a story about him the other day on the site, which is still there. Go check that out to learn more about him. Might very well be your kicker next year. Also brought in Liam Evans, who James talked about a lot. It's the kid from Moore. She's going to be just a freshman this year. Luke Elzinga is theoretically back at punter. Your kick returner last year was Jalil Farouk. He's back. Gavin Freeman was your punt returner. He's back. But it feels like all these jobs are kind of open for change, pretty much. That's kind of how Brent Venables termed it in his press conference a couple weeks ago. I guess just kind of it's open-ended, but with those 4 in particular, kicker, punter, punt returner, kick returner, who are you favoring to have those jobs? Do you think it's going to be some of the same guys, and just how do you kind of evaluate the strength overall of this special teams? Also, obviously, new management with Doug Beakey coming in from San Diego State, replacing Jay Nunez. So there's a lot of potential change here for the special teams unit, which was not great last year for Oklahoma. It was kind of so-so.
Yeah, I mean, look, I expect them to have a different kicker this year.
Yeah, me too.
No, I like, if you ask me right now, I think it'll be Tyler Keltner. Like you said, we've heard really good things about him through the first week. And again, you could probably tell a little bit more about kickers early in camp than you can some of the other positions, just because they're non-contact.
Sure.
All the time, like
he's booting it through from 50 plus. He's booting it through from 50 plus.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you can go into next season with Zach Schmidt as your starting kicker again. I think unless he's just shown some remarkable improvement, 6 missed kicks back-to-back years just isn't going to cut it. Especially, the struggles he had from 40 plus last year.
Those close games.
Not ideal. Tyler Keltner, I think, is really interesting. Comes from Florida State, but he wasn't even their starting kicker last year. He was a 2-time all SoCon kicker at East Tennessee State. For his career, made 56 of 74s, got along at 54 yards, 131 on PATs. Went to Florida State last year, as a grad transfer. Tallahassee's home for him. He grew up watching Florida State, was a Florida State fan, learned how to kick just down the road from campus. So it was a opportunity for him to go home and compete for the starting job. Ultimately, he did not win that starting job. They stuck with the incumbent there.
Yeah.
So he just kind of sat on the bench last year, but he said it was an experience that he still appreciated because the kind of season he had at Florida State and what he learned about what it takes to compete at that level. Even though the season obviously ended very disappointingly for the Seminoles after getting left out of the college football playoff, but coming to Oklahoma, he said it felt like a mutually beneficial decision for him and for the program. Obviously, he knows some of the kickers that Oklahoma's been able to go through here. He expects to help make this team a top 10 team nationally in field goal percentage. And you look at where they were last year; they were in like the 70s, 80s, just because of those struggles with Zach Schmidt. He knows he's going to compete, but he knows he has the experience, and he's he has something to prove. Like, he's a guy that rode the bench last year. He's kicked at the FCS level, has not really kicked at the Power 4, Power 5 level yet. And he wants to make it to the NFL. He thinks his leg's good enough. And if he can put together the kind of season that Oklahoma needs from its kicker, then that becomes a possibility for him.
Yeah, and I'm credit to you, Josh, because you were kind of the first one to actually drop this on the board, pretty much, that Tyler was leading in this situation right now, just because of what he's done at practice. And I think that will qualify for some change because, as Brent Venables talked about, Zach Smith was the guy that was doing really well in practice reps and things like that last year. He was the guy that was showing that he was able to do it. So if you got a guy that's beating him out in that situation so far this season, I mean, you could probably guess there's going to be a change here pretty soon. And as you talked about with Liam Evans as well, I mean, this is a guy I've covered for a long time with my former job as well. I mean, just the number 7 kicker in the nation coming out in that class.
I think he's the future. Yeah,
he's the guy that he's got. If not this year, I mean, it'll be the next season or so. It's going to be his job. So it'll be up to him, man, from there on. So, but I think he's capable of doing it. I mean, he's highly ranked for a reason. He's one of the top guys, and this special teams unit is going to look a lot different, man. So I think fans should get ready for that at least.
Yeah, I agree with Liam Evans being the future, but if you can get like Tyler Keltner come in and kind of bridge that gap where you don't have to rush Liam Evans into a big time role and as a true freshman, which I know can be tough sometimes for kickers because that position is so much about mentality, and you don't want to damage his ego. I don't want not ego, but you don't want to have him get in his own head as a freshman in some pressure situations necessarily. You want to be able to ease him in. So if you can get Tyler Keltner to come in and handle that position adequately, I think you really resetting what the special teams is capable of at Oklahoma, because it hasn't been great these first 2 years. Obviously last year I think they were 94th in S&P Plus special teams rating. Doug Deacon's hoping to change that.
Yeah, and I think that's largely what's happened with Zach Schmidt. I have little doubt that Brent Venables is. I don't think he's lying. I think Zach Schmidt has been lighting it up in practice the last couple of years. He's been the best guy, but it's a lot of between the ears. I mean, he almost can feel the misses before they happen on the fields. Like you can almost see it. Like this feels like a miss. Like it just the big moments. Like it just feels like he's a little bit, in that spot. Like the confidence in the big spot to make a big kick is a little wavered. I have no doubt that he's very good. And like we've talked to Zach before, great guy. I've only heard good things about him as a teammate, things like that. It's just I do think on the field that's hurt him in key spots. I don't see any reason why Luke Elzinga wouldn't be a punter again next year. He was great the back half of the year. He's back. That seems open and shut. As far as the returners, like we said, Gavin Freeman and Jalil Farooq were the punt returner and kick returner respectively last year. They're both back. Gavin Freeman, it was a weird year because he ran the kick back, obviously in the opener. He had some nice moments. He also had some tough spots with a couple of muffs in there. But for the most part, it was fine. Jalil Farooq, kind of the same thing. Had some nice moments, but also some fumbles that were not great at times, things like that. I'm curious to see if they make any changes at those two spots. You feel like Brendan Thompson would be perfect for one of these
I was going to
jobs.
say that. I just want to see where he's at on this situation, man. You always pick the fastest guy, and you think he is. I mean, like it would just make more sense. I mean, just see, especially on like the kick returner, like you got a guy that's really fast and to handle that, because punt return is kind of a skill a little bit. The way you have to do it, you have to be attentive to where everybody is, also to be able to call a fair catch when you need to. But kick returning, usually you just get it and go, man. So like, I want to see where he's at on that situation. Go ahead.
Kick return is a little bit more about straight line speed, which obviously Brendan Thompson has. Because you have a little bit more space when you're fielding that, and you can kind of take off and kind of gain some momentum. So I wouldn't be surprised if he got a look there. And look, they're going to give a dozen different guys opportunities to field kicks and punts between now and fall camp. I personally think that you need to find a better option than Gavin Freeman on punt returns. He had that big return against Arkansas State in the opener, but it was also Arkansas State in the opener. It felt like a choose your own adventure a lot of the times when he was back there trying to field kicks. I think he had 3 or 4 muffs, just wasn't great. I don't think it exuded confidence anytime that you had to send him back there. But I'm curious to see who might be an option there. Peyton Bowen is the type of guy that, look, we know he can make plays on special teams.
Yeah.
Blocked 2 kicks last year. I'd like to see what he looks like with the ball in his hands there. Maybe a Dion Burks, though, I don't know if you want to send your potential starting slot guy back there to be a return guy on punt returns, because, punt returns can be a little bit more dangerous than some of those other roles, just in terms of taking hits. Sam Franklin is one that I think could be a return guy in either one of those phases. But I think you need to look at your options, because I just was not blown away by what Gavin Freeman's full body of work was last season in that role.
Yeah, no, I'll be interested to see, we should have a viewing window for practice sometime soon. And like you said, they usually, when we've been in practice in the past, it's like 5, 6, 7 guys are doing it. But I'm curious to see who the group is. Like you said, Peyton Bowen, I think is certainly a quality option. I mean, that it's not unheard of for the safeties to do that. Billy Bowman obviously has a lot of kick returning in his past. They've kind of gotten away from that, but he certainly could do it. So Peyton Bowen could be that same boat. Like you said, Dion Burks is not a terrible option, I don't think, either. So there's some options obviously on the roster, and we'll see how that goes through camp and who ends up actually getting that job when the opener comes around next year. It'll be fun though. New special teams coordinator, obviously, with Deacon. We'll see if they can improve and button up that area, which was, like we said, wasn't just like a disaster, but it hurt them it hurt them. And especially in the losses, it hurt them. The 2 losses in the regular season. So
I will say one guy who I don't know if he will get a look on returns, but I'd be curious to see him back there after talking to him, was Jocelyn Malaska.
Okay.
We heard Brent Venables say that he was one of their top testers, in terms of agility, vertical, all these things. Like, he has the physical skills to, be elusive, be a little bit shifty, make some guys miss. I don't know how much experience he might have in returning punts, but as a cornerback, obviously, a guy who's used to, getting work on the jugs, having the ball in his hands, not necessarily as much as like a wide receiver or anything like that. But I think that he might be like an intriguing guy to just like, I wonder if he could be in that role.
Yeah.
I can't remember if he was returning kicks at Bethany when I was covering him there. I can't really remember if he was doing that.
I feel like he just did everything. But
I was going to say, it wouldn't surprise me because usually when you have like a star player at one of the schools, they do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Right. I would say maybe one other bonus one too would be maybe Jacquez Petaway. Wouldn't be a terrible option either. Obviously, didn't really see the field a whole lot last year, but he kind of could be like that perfect, kind of like Gavin Freeman was last year, where he's a receiver who sees the field, but he's not one of your top guys. That could kind of be Petaway this year in some respects. Like he kind of is part of the offense in a lesser role, so he can do the punt return thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You have options, obviously, like we said, and so we'll keep an eye on that as we go along with the new management with Doug Deacon. Mm-hmm. I think that's it. Great show. Covered a lot of ground. Had a lot to talk about. We'll be back. Programming note: Colin and I are going to do the later show on Wednesday this week. Figured don't want to go right head to head with the tournament. People will be very consumed by it later this week for good reason. And so we're going to do the show on Wednesday. He was in Houston for a big recruiting event down there, which had like a ton of you guys. So we're going to talk all about that on Wednesday. Anything else happens between now and then, we're sure to break down a little bit more. Three of us will be back next Monday as we finally get into some spring camp stuff a little more thoroughly as we start to talk to these guys and see practice and things like that. So look forward to that. We'll talk to everybody then. Colin and I will see you on Wednesday, but for now, that's it. Tom Green, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys next time on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.